Good morning, dear people of the internet, and welcome to the confusing chaos that having ADHD or autism can be sometimes. And I have both, so I know about it, and it's even more sometimes. Today we'll be talking about using autism and or ADHD as an explanation versus using it as an excuse. Both seem to happen, and the latter is never very helpful, so we need to dive into that. And it would be nice to have some clarity on which is which. Now, even though I'm both autistic and I have ADHD, I could never speak for the entirety of the community. First of all, everyone is just different, and second of all, I don't have experience with having higher support needs than I have, so I don't know how that is. And also, I cannot represent the people that look or are different from me. For example, I know there's a lot of underrepresentation or people not being heard in the autistic and ADHD community of people that are not white. I'm white, I cannot speak for non-white people, so that's important to remember. I'm not the voice of all autistic and or ADHD people, nor could I ever be, or could anyone be for that matter. I'm only one person and I will try to be as nuanced as possible, but I can only speak for myself. I did ask other people on here on TikTok also for their experiences and opinions on the topic, so that helped a lot, and I'm grateful that people wanted to share those, so we'll go through those later on in the video. Before we get started, I have a very short public service announcement. I've reached my goal of gathering 1,000 subscribers on here, which is very amazing, and I'm very grateful. As promised in like my third video, I'm doing a giveaway, which will have more details in the end of the video, but you can win a little plushie like this one, in a color of your choosing. So look out for that. I did not put it in the script, so I might forget, but I will add it in there. Here's a note to my editing self, if I forget, it will be there. So you can win this. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't help anymore if you subscribe. So please do that if you haven't done that already. It would be very helpful because I have this very delusional plan of YouTube helping me through college and beyond that. And it's maybe starting to work at some point, so that would be amazing. So subscribing and watching my videos would be extremely helpful still, if you like them of course. So thank you for that. Now let's get started. The reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place is called Rainbow Hair Gate, which started with this video I found on TikTok.
Of dyeing my please. Good morning everybody. This is the final reveal of dyeing my hair rainbow. I am currently in yellow lighting right now, so it's going to look a little different, and then I'll go into like regular lighting in my room, like from the sunlight, and then you can see the colors there. But we're gonna take my curlers out together. And last night I did shower in cold water, so the colors would not mix, and I actually at one point thought that the colors at the bottom were all just a big brown blob because my hair was wet. And as I was drying my hair, I actually started crying because I was like, oh no, not all these hours of just sitting there. Okay, that sounded terrible, but still, my back freaking hurt from all this. And my mom dyed my hair for me, just to let you know, and she did a beautiful job. I'm gonna turn around. Oh my god, I freaking love it.
I'm not going to be showing the entire video because it's just about the beautiful hair. This video is not a problem, it's beautiful hair, but I wanted to show you some part of it because it's the start of this entire thing. On this video, someone called Cheryl commented this: 8 hours. What did you guys do that took 8 hours? I'm legitimately befuddled how anybody's hair can take more than 2 to 3 hours, and most of that's waiting. I think it's a bit out of pocket to comment this, but you're allowed to ask. It is the internet after all. But then she kind of doubled down, which made it weird. This next comment is what made me thinking. It took me 4 hours to do full rainbow hair multiple times. I don't know why we're doing comparisons. I literally just said I am befuddled as how it took that long because it has never taken me personally that long. One day neurotypical are going to stop pretending everything is about them. I read this entire thing as she being the one that started comparing things, nobody else did that. I don't think the initial comment was too bad, but it's the doubling down that makes this a problem. The original creator made another video explaining what happened after this.
Of dyeing my please. Good morning everybody. This is the final reveal of dyeing my hair rainbow. I am currently in yellow lighting right now, so it's going to look a little different, and then I'll go into like regular lighting in my room, like from the sunlight, and then you can see the colors there. But we're gonna take my curlers out together. And last night I did shower in cold water, So the colors would not mix, and I actually at one point thought that the colors at the bottom were all just a big brown blob because my hair was wet. And as I was drying my hair, I actually started crying because I was like, oh no, not all these hours of just sitting there. Okay, that sounded terrible, but still, my back freaking hurt from all this. And my mom dyed my hair for me, just to let you know. And she did a beautiful job. I'm gonna turn around.
So Cheryl decided to make a video about this, or multiple actually, and also said that her hair is better than the original creator's hair, which is not a very nice thing to say. We do know that Cheryl is neurodivergent. I don't know what kind of neurodivergent she is. The term neurodivergent is often used as a synonym for ADHD and or autism, but it's not what it actually means. Neurodivergent is an umbrella term that describes people with brains that work differently from typical brains. Neurotypical people. So that includes autistic brains because they process information differently than typical brains. And ADHD brains cannot make and distribute dopamine in the same way as typical brains can. So that also makes it neurodivergent. There are a lot more types of neurodivergence, such as dyslexia, obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, PTSD. There are temporary types of neurodivergence, there are permanent types of neurodivergence, there are types that you get once, for example, acquired brain injury that lasts for the rest of your life, there are ones that you're born with, for example, ADHD and autism. There are so many types of neurodivergence, and ADHD and autism are not all of them. I'm explaining this as to say that Cheryl saying I am neurodivergent doesn't really explain a lot in this context, because the word neurodivergent itself is not a diagnosis. Now, Cheryl does not owe us her diagnosis, let that be clear, but claiming you're neurodivergent without the further explanation is not really working in this context. So because of that, it's starting to sound more like an excuse than an explanation or anything else. However, I'm not sure if I can be the judge of that. I've taken some time to watch a lot of Cheryl's videos, actually, because she makes a lot of them, and in one of them she explains that communication in any way is very hard for her, and that she doesn't really differentiate her tone of communication or ways of communication between who she's talking to, which is important because the creator of the original video is 17 years old, aka minor, and Cheryl is 40 years old, aka not a minor. In addition to all of this, she finds it very hard to read someone's age, which is understandable for me personally because I also struggle with that. I think the most important thing here is how Cheryl looks back on the situation itself. I think that we can all agree that the first comment she made can be seen as an unprompted comment that could be seen as mean. I also think that we can agree that her doubling down and making videos about this has not shown any good faith, and it doesn't really sound like a helpful decision for everyone involved. So the only helpful thing here that Cheryl could do is apologize and show that she has reflected on this. In a comment on one of her own videos about apologizing and how that works, she says, "Yes, I was wrong to make her feel like that. It sounds like you guys just want me to apologize for saying the words instead of actually having regret for the feeling I gave her." I couldn't really find this apology, but Cheryl posts a lot, and I've not watched everything, of course. Now, it would have been nice if the apology actually got to the original person making this video. I don't know about that. I don't know. But this comment does show that Cheryl understands that she hurt this person and that she regrets doing so, which is very important, I think. It's very clear that all communication from several sides has not been great on this topic. And she did hurt someone, which is always bad, but in the end, she didn't use her neurodivergence as a free pass to be a bad person or make someone hurt. So what she did was bad, and even though her neurodivergence might explain some of that, she can still also take accountability and apologize. They are not mutually exclusive things. I feel like this example was a little bit complicated. It was a good example from real world stories, but I will try to explain it with a more general example from my own life. I have ADHD, and because of that I struggle to know how much I can do in a certain time frame, which often causes me to be late. Now that has gotten a lot better since I am medicated, but that's not the point. Anyways, when I'm late, I hurt or annoy in a certain way the person that is waiting on me. In this situation, I can explain that it is because of my ADHD that I'm late, probably partially, but still, ADHD has something to do with that. But I can also choose to apologize and look for a way that I can avoid this situation later on. I can do both of these things, which can cause the other person to understand me better, yay, empathy, and I can apologize, which shows an understanding from my side, yay empathy. So there is mutual empathy in the situation, and both me explaining why and me apologizing has made the situation better. Probably, when everyone in the situation is being sensible. Obviously, the rainbow hair story didn't get to that point, but it was moving in that direction in a certain way. This entire situation made me question if people actually use their neurodivergence as an excuse sometimes. I myself have been accused sometimes of using my autism and ADHD as an excuse while I was just explaining why I needed certain accommodations or why I was doing certain things. And that's incredibly infuriating to go through when you're just trying to explain and they're saying you're using it as an excuse, just do whatever you're supposed to do, or just do whatever I think you're supposed to do. I thought that Reddit would be a place to find people's stories about this, so I went to Reddit and I found this story. It's called "I'm so sick of people using autism as an excuse to be a shitty person," which is very generalized, and I don't like that. But okay. I have a coworker who claims to be autistic and uses her autism to just all around be a shitty human. Just to preface this, I also have a sister with autism who isn't a shitty human being, so I know her actions aren't because of that. Right off the bat, saying, I know someone who has autism and doesn't do that, therefore this behavior isn't connected to autism, is a very bad argument because, again, everyone is different. This argument gets used a lot, so it's making me a little bit mad. But okay, let's read the rest. Maybe this person has a point. I work at a convenience store and I'm currently one of the managers there. One of my coworkers, we'll call her E, has autism or at least claims to be autistic. She has been a nightmare for the past several months. Just getting to the list. She actively refuses to listen to me or any other managers except one. She yells at other coworkers and gets into their faces telling them they aren't doing the job right. She accidentally breaks things when she's angry or upset and then blames it on her being autistic. She blames her yelling at coworkers on being autistic. She yells at customers and we have had multiple complaints about it and she blames it on her autism. She won't help other coworkers at the register and will actively ignore them, call people on her phone at work, hide in the back room on her phone texting and calling people, follow people out of the store talking to them, and just refuses to do the job in general. She has also started sneaking her boyfriend into the back room and locking the office door when back there. We have caught her on camera drinking in the parking lot, but because the other manager is 70 years old, she refuses to fire her because of her autism. I don't know what to do anymore because this isn't even half the stuff that my coworkers tell me she does, and every single time I bring it up to the other manager, she tells me she doesn't know what she's doing isn't right. We are actively losing customers because of her behavior, and I don't know what to do anymore. I think that if she's telling everything how it is, and we also are missing the context from the coworker in question, but also I think this might be using autism as an excuse to have shitty behavior. I also think this post shows two other problems. First, autism doesn't mean you cannot take responsibility. The other manager should talk to her or fire her because you're in the end having a contract doing a job and you should do the job, whoever you are. That is just how life works, and I agree with that. And it also bothers me that OP here says claims to be autistic like they don't believe that the coworker is actually autistic several times. Saying that in the context of this post implies that this disbelief of the coworker actually being autistic has at least something to do with the listed behaviors here. Either the yelling or the not doing the job or the calling in the back room or the drinking outside or the having a boyfriend. I don't know. Something. But these are all things that autistic people can do, not because they're autistic necessarily, but they are all things that autistic people can do. And it's not your job to question someone's diagnosis if you're not them or in their care team. A few people in the comments were suggesting that this person might actually have a personality disorder and should get checked out, but I'm against Reddit diagnosing because life doesn't work like that and we don't even know this person. There's no way around this person using their autism to justify what they're doing, but that doesn't mean that they're not autistic. And I found one case of this maybe happening because, again, there might be other stuff going on and we don't know this person. We only got one side of the story, and that's how that works in all the cases that I'm talking about, by the way, but we're talking about this from an ADHD and or autistic point of view, so I would like to have those point of views to talk about it. But again, this is an account that might show using autism as an excuse for doing shitty things, because this person is not necessarily a shitty person also. But I did find this other post of someone accusing someone of using the autism as an excuse. It's called "Am I the a-hole for not accepting my niece's autism as an excuse?" Hi all, my friends seem to be divided on this, and one of them suggested this board. My 48F younger sister's sister's niece. That's not how family relations work, but okay. The niece is 17 years old, was diagnosed autistic not that long ago. She has always been kind of weird, but now she uses the autism label to justify that. Excuse me, justify? Since when do we need to justify being weird? I've never really gotten along with her because every time I show up, she's extremely cold and withdrawn ever since she was a little kid. Since she got her diagnosis, this has gotten worse. To be honest, I think a big part of youth mental health services is turning normal teen kids' troubles into doctors' profits, while encouraging poor behavior in the kids because they can hide everything they do behind their diagnosis. In my opinion, my sister and her niece, your sister's niece, so not your niece. I'm so confused. Anyways, doesn't matter. My sister and her niece are shining examples of this. The other day, my sister had a major work obligation and she asked me to take her to a doctor's appointment. The niece, not the sister, I think. This person's use of grammar is giving me a headache. I thought I'd take time afterwards to do some bonding. This backfired hard. After the appointment, I told her we'd make one more stop before we went home. I planned to surprise her with a trip to the mall, where I was more than willing to indulge her in some shopping. If someone did this to me when I was her age, I would have been thrilled. That's you, not someone else. You don't know your niece that well, or your sister's niece. Who cares? When we pulled up, she asked, "Is it okay if I stay in the car?" I looked at her in disbelief and said, "Seriously? This is for you." She said, "I don't like them all. It's too light and too bright." So every autistic person I know wouldn't have liked the surprise. I'm sure there are autistic people out there who would like this, but you need to know the person before you do that. Because a lot, if not all autistic people, at least all autistic people I know, like to be aware of what is coming in the future. Especially if it involves loud and bright places like a mall, which is not a very nice place to be if your brain cannot choose which kinds of sounds and noises and lights to process. We cannot choose. Everything comes in just as loud as everything else. So that's not the nicest place to be when you're autistic, and some people like it, and that's fine. That is not what we're talking about here. But you should have asked before you went there, at the very least, and not just driven there and expected them to like it, because again, you don't know this person so well. Even outside of the autism, you don't know this person very well. They might not like a surprise like this. It's not a box of chocolates, it's going to the mall. That's something different. If you have like some general empathy and knowledge about autism, you wouldn't bet on them liking this. I said, "Seriously, you're making a fuss over some lights and noise like a little kid?" Then she pulled out the autism card and said she can't help it. I told her that I'd be happy to buy her anything she wants, and she said she'd prefer to go home. I said that was super ungrateful because I'd already driven her all the way there, which was pretty far. She said, and I'm quoting exactly, "Why do I need to make myself uncomfortable to make you happy?" Very great question. I am asking you the same thing. I kind of blew up after this because I was so furious. I told her that being autistic is no excuse for acting like a snot and that it makes me extremely uncomfortable when she acts like she hates me every time I see her. I said that the real world isn't going to cater to her peculiarities and she needs to start acting like a normal person before she ends up alone. She started crying, which she always does when she's even a little upset, and I told her to save the crocodile tears for someone who's fooled by them. I know I was a little harsh, but I really think it was a much needed reality check. I drove her home and dropped her off in silence. Honestly, I think I'm extra mad about this because my son was never given the benefit of the doubt from the family when he was suffering from addiction. That has absolutely nothing to do with this. That's about your son. This is about your niece or your sister's niece, whatever, and you, not about your son. He has nothing to do with this. Later, my sister texted me to say that it's going to take a lot for her to trust me with their daughter again. It was her niece, not her sister's niece. I said, "For what? The unforgivable offense of trying to buy her a present?" I tried to do a nice gesture for my niece and got totally shut down and disrespected. Am I the a-hole? Yes, you are. No doubt about it. First of all, this is not using autism as an excuse. Second of all, reading this was incredibly infuriating. Reddit has judged this person as the bad guy in this story, and rightfully so, and because of that, she has made the following updates. I see now my friend just told me to post here because she wanted to call me an a-hole, but as far as I can tell, you're a bunch of pharma brainwashed children anyways. That's very immature. The entire story of how she reacted to everything has been very immature, but this edit is astonishingly immature. If you're not ready to hear that you're the bad guy, you shouldn't post on here. Now back to the actual thing. OP claims that she felt hurt by her niece because she already drove to the mall. Now first of all, again, she should have asked and not assumed, because going to the mall, especially when you're autistic, is an entire thing. It's not impossible, but it's a thing. And I also assume that she felt rejected by her niece. So, and this is playing devil's advocate, but maybe the niece should apologize, and that she didn't do that might be using autism as an excuse in a way. But I think this is the aunt's fault and not the niece's fault at all. Because when you give someone a gift, you should consider who you're giving the gift to, as I said before. Because of that, I don't think the niece used autism as an excuse, and I do think that because of her reaction, the aunt or OP deserves a special place in hell. Besides these two posts, Reddit didn't have a lot about autism being used as an excuse, except for a lot of people complaining that they get accused of using autism as an excuse while they're not doing that, and rightfully so. Anyway, because I couldn't really find more than two accounts from what I assume is neurotypical people, I decided to ask people in my own life, and you guys, of course, as I said before, so we'll get into that. First, I want to tell you about what my best friend, who is autistic and works in healthcare, has to say about this. Particularly because of the Reddit story we just read, because it has the following sentence. I said that the real world isn't going to cater to her peculiarities, and she needs to start acting like a normal person before she ends up alone. Now, my friend has not read this Reddit post, yet when I asked them for their opinions and experiences on the topic, they said that they have heard the sentence, the real world isn't like that, way too many times in this context, especially in educational spaces, which is kind of weird, but that does have something to do with this topic because now I have heard it twice from different sources. It's an argument to say that connecting your autism to certain needs that you have is an excuse because the real world isn't like that and doesn't cater to your needs. That is not a problem from the autistic person though, that's a problem from the real world, whatever that even means. And at the same time, I found out in my life that either the real world is in fact willing to help and listen to me and help me out, or people are not willing to listen and help me out. Mostly for capitalistic reasons. It's easier and cheaper in the short term to not hire people who need accommodations, for example. But a lot of companies benefit from having someone on their team with a different perspective on the world, for example. And once you get those accommodations figured out, you're most likely just good to go. Maybe they need some tweaking over time, but you've got it in place and you can go on with your life now. That's most of the times what it is. So the real world doesn't cater to your needs argument is a very bad argument. And again, what even is the real world? I want to share two experiences that my best friend told me about with you. One time they were working in a grocery store and sometimes they needed extra explanations on how to do things. And they could always say to the manager or coworker, hey, I'm autistic, I need extra explanation. Can you help me out? And then they would help them out. Until one time someone responded with, you can be so much more than your autism. And this person claimed to have worked in healthcare that said that and know better what autism was than my best friend who is actually autistic and this person was not autistic. So that's a weird thing to say. But then it got even worse because this person proceeded to cut my best friend out and make an entire thing of it. Thus also claiming that my friend was just using their autism as an excuse to not work harder. And reminder, they just asked for explanation. They did not do their work, of course. Which is just another, as far as I know, neurotypical person accusing an autistic person of using autism as an excuse. Well, it's just an explanation and they're not harming anyone by asking this. It's a question for extra explanation to do your work well. There's nothing wrong with that. My friend also told me about a situation in which they might have used their autism as an excuse, which is the only time they did that. They had a lottery subscription and they didn't know how that came to be. No one's fault exactly, but they were calling the lottery company to stop the subscription. And as you might know, lottery subscription call center people are often very persistent. So my best friend decided to present themselves as more autistic than they actually are in order to kind of avoid that. There's a difference between this situation and all the other situations we have talked about so far. And the difference is that no one got hurt in this situation. Maybe the wallet of the lottery company, but we don't care about that, to be honest. It's not a situation where there's some kind of personal misunderstanding going on. And all the other situations had some kind of personal misunderstanding going on. And at least one person in all the other situations we talked about, not the lottery situation, needs to apologize. It reminds me of a comment I got when I asked you about your experiences. It reads, I have ADHD. I do not like using it as an explanation because people will think it's an excuse. But with sometimes I will use it as an excuse or use some perks of it. You know what I mean. because I do have things in my life that are harder because of ADHD, and things are sometimes harder because of having the label itself. So I think it's fair for me to sometimes get things like extra time, not even because I need it, but also because it just makes life a little easier. Like sometimes I think that everyone should get those perks, like extra time for tests or extra help, because also when you don't have ADHD or autism, life can be a struggle. So this person sometimes uses their ADHD in order to get perks. In this case, I wouldn't even call it using it as an excuse. Stress is notoriously bad for you, and I can imagine that short time frames within ADHD for a test can be more stressful than for a neurotypical person. Sure, a neurotypical person might benefit from more time also and less stress also, but that's more a society problem reformation thing. I wouldn't be against that. A slower society, less stress, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think this is necessarily using your ADHD as an excuse. There was one other comment where someone saw someone else using their ADHD as an excuse. I have ADHD and was just sitting in class and I overheard a girl who tried to avoid work at all costs talking to the teacher and asked the teacher to be less harsh on her as she just found out she has ADHD. The teacher was actually very nice about it and wanted to accommodate, so she asked the girl how she found out, and her literal answer was, I saw a TikTok. So the teacher wanted to know if she was going to seek out help outside of class, and she said no. Why? Don't know if it was an excuse, but wild story regardless. I find this outrageous. To be clear, I know that getting diagnosed in this day and age in certain places is very expensive and not affordable for a lot of people, or a lot of people cannot even get through waitlists. And I think that self-diagnosis is valid. However, it's only valid if it's well researched, and one TikTok doesn't count as well researched. Most self-diagnosed folks that I've heard of know like DSM-5 part of ADHD or autism in this case by heart. And that's not like the TikTok thing. That's different and that doesn't count. People that do it like this actually harm the community and the credibility of saying, hey, I have ADHD, can you help me out with this? Or stuff like that. Someone else experienced this. As an ADHD team, I've experienced this so many times. One time I was playing with my fidget extremely silently, and one of my classmates said, oh my god, can you stop that so loud? It was a silent fidget, a foam stress ball, and I explained to her that I cannot stop. I need it because I have autism and ADHD, and I was overstimulated but still verbal at the time. She proceeds to say, you don't need it, you're using your autism as an excuse to get coddled. Another time, a teacher accused me of using my autism and ADHD as an excuse when I asked her if she could explain what she said in a different way because I couldn't understand with her explanation. I explained that I couldn't understand because of the way she explained it, and I told her that as an ADHD person I think a bit differently, and she accused me of using it as an excuse. Why do they always think we are using our diagnosis as an excuse? These are both normal things to do and to ask for, I think. I would assume that a teacher's job description, maybe not literally, but includes being able to explain things differently for different people because all people work differently, and even neurotypical people might benefit from a different explanation. I think that's a teacher's job. And using a fidget is absolutely not getting coddled. It's like regulating your own nervous system, which is taking responsibility, which is great. There were a lot more comments of people getting accused of using their autism or ADHD as an excuse for no good reason, which raises the following question: can autism or ADHD even be used as an excuse? Is that even a thing? Especially without it actually being the reason for someone doing something, because as we have seen, if you use it as an explanation and then also take accountability, there's no excuse going on. Except for the person that was yelling at people in the store they worked at. We have seen no situations where autism or ADHD is used as an excuse to do bad behavior in a hurtful or disturbing way without apologizing and it also being hurtful. That sentence was weird, but you know what I mean. That was the only situation where I would truly say that the autism was used as an excuse to do shitty behavior and that it didn't make any sense. So you could argue that autism or ADHD might be used as an excuse in some cases. However, those cases are very rare, as we have seen. Sometimes there's more going on, and other cases that we have seen are wildly overshadowed by the amount of times people have been accused of using their autism or ADHD as an excuse, while it's actually not the case, and people just, I don't know, being mad or something that there are people who need things that make them not able to function in the current capitalistic system or something. I don't know. Like not being able to function in the real world, which is actually not how life works or is supposed to work, I guess. Therefore, we can conclude that someone is most likely not using their autism or ADHD as an excuse ever. Yes, sometimes people are. We've seen that there are some cases which might show people using it as an excuse, but by far, most people are not. So if you ever think that someone is using their autism or ADHD as an excuse, the thing you should do is tell yourself that you're probably wrong and you can talk to someone about this, because the person with ADHD or autism, you can likely talk to them about this and not approach it like you're using it as an excuse. You can ask why you're doing something, especially when it's something like not wanting to go into a mall because it's loud and bright in there, or using a fidget to regulate yourself. Those are not the cases where autism is sensibly used as an excuse. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the person that has autism or ADHD even do that? It doesn't benefit them. It's the end of the video, and as promised, there was a giveaway included for this little guy in a color of your choosing. I'm giving away one of these, and in order to win one, the thing you should do is comment on this video your favorite color and why this is your favorite color. And if you win, I will, in the first weekend of February, so not the weekend of February 1st, but the weekend after that, I will randomly choose a comment. I will put in all your names in the wheel and randomly choose one of you. You should be subscribed. And then I will leave my email and you should send me an email with a screenshot, and then we have figured it out. Okay? So comment your favorite color and why this is your favorite color. Thank you so much for subscribing. If you have not done it yet, I would highly recommend it. We are having fun here, sometimes, a lot of the times. And if you like this video, please like this video. Thank you for watching, and then I will see you next time. Ciao!